Okay, so guys, what we're gonna do is while we're waiting for people to come, we're just gonna have fun and play test. And also, yeah, some introductions. So,
Hey guys, my name is Alex. I go to Ryerson University, third year, and I like to make games in my spare time, so I just want to come out and get a chance to meet everybody.
okay.
Are you gonna?
Yeah. Let's just all do introductions and whatnot. And
Check. Mic check one.
yeah.
Hey.
Okay. Yeah. So introduce yourself.
Hey, how are you? My name is Ryan, and I do sound and music for games.
Yeah, but didn't you just say you work for the Grid?
The Grid. Is that what?
Oh wait, that's oh my god. Okay, so that's my blind moment. That was an awesome blooper, and so we've attracted a lot of developers, and we have some coverage, which is pretty cool. Okay, so
I'm Nino. I'm going to cover you guys. It's going to be great. Make it look good.
so it's going to be your job then to grill us and ask us questions and whatnot, and yeah, let's just pass this around.
Hi, I'm Serge. I'm a concept artist. I know Andrew.
Yeah, my name is Andrew. I do concept art and animation.
Hi, I'm Jamie, and I'm a developer. So right now I'm working in the mobile space.
I'm Tyler, and I also know Andrew. I'm an indie developer.
Yo, what's up, Andrew? I have no idea who you are. See, I was even looking at the wrong person. My name's Jesse. I'm a journalist.
All right, so I guess I'll take this opportunity. Well, more people might show up. Maybe I'll reintroduce things as it happens.
We got to introduce Miguel, too.
Oh, Miguel.
Yeah.
Go for it, man.
I'm Miguel from Spooky Squid Games, and I'm about to do a little intro of who I am with slides and shit. But half of you know who I am, so this will be a bit ridiculous, but whatever.
Well, hopefully more people will filter in, and then it won't be, But I don't know you, so I'm excited. Yeah.
So you can start off with that, and then after we'll get Miguel started off on the games, and we'll just fool around, play for a little bit, and then get started on the talks and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just very quickly. I'm Daniel Joseph. I sort of organize this thing. I'm one of the faculty here at the Academy of the Impossible, and basically I've been associated with kind of organizing these game events that we run every month called Play the Impossible, which you are now attending. And the idea is essentially to explore and look at all the different possibilities of what games are in our world, because we kind of think that not enough people are talking about them, especially in mainstream circles. And the idea is to kind of get maybe the subculture as well as the mainstream culture as well as anyone else who's even slightly finds an interest in kind of the possibilities of what games are to kind of come together and talk about them. And really these are salons. The idea isn't that I'm in charge or any one other person is in charge. Really the idea is that everyone here has a role and everyone has the ability to speak up and talk. For our first event that we held was on Minecraft, where we kind of got everyone into the room. Everyone had computers. We had some technical difficulties, but for the most part, it was a lot of fun. We kind of just talked about what made Minecraft fun for us. Actually, we have a pretty cool video up on the Academy of the Impossible website where it's just a recording of all of us playing Minecraft, talking about Minecraft, thinking about what makes it interesting. For the second one, we talked about old adventure games and kind of going from the big open world possibilities of Minecraft to the exact opposite, which is kind of these constrained, very thoughtful, very thought intensive, very puzzle-oriented style of games.
Dan, let me just give this to the audience. So we'll split that up and then. So it's gonna start with you, right? You should.
Yeah.
It's okay. Hold it. It's yours now. That's your interruptions thing, right?
All right. Yeah. So you can hold on to that.
So just notes at any time. Just interject. Feel
Yeah. So, and just to finish up, yeah. So basically, it was we talked about adventure games, and then after that, a month ago, we got together and we talked about first-person shooters and Battlefield and kind of what was exciting about and different about, say, like a very high-budget kind of game like Battlefield, but also like the social aspect that is kind of built into it, like whether or not people really think that like are social networks going to be an integral part of video games in the future, or is that even something that we want from things? What, and kind of also talking about the nature of sport in video games, and like, what is it about first-person shooters that seem to kind of create a kind of sport-like culture around them, and a culture of play that's kind of not necessarily associated with the kind of, I guess like dude bro style culture that, has to do with that, right? And this week, it's kind of all about people from the city and people that are here doing things and creating and working on that. I am also a PhD student. I study the video game community here in Toronto. I wrote a little bit about it for my MA thesis as well. And it's something I'm interested in. So that's kind of just the rough boilerplate. And so I guess we're just going to kind of like show some videos, have you guys talk, have like anyone wants to show anything, and just kind of move forward. So yeah, all right. And so I'm going to hand it over to Yassine because he's been doing an awesome job getting everyone here. So.
Well, actually, I've been doing nothing. Anyways, the whole reason why I've kind of done this was because of all the great experience I've had with you guys, and I've been really inspired. And you guys are so full of awesome. And I thought, like, well, I might as well just give back a little bit of love, and let's just talk about our stuff and show each other what we're doing. And like, I never really have the chance to sit down, catch up with all of you, and see what you're really working on. So, Miguel, why don't you strap on some awesome? Show us what you're working on here. Here's the mic.
Okay, we'll just get set up here. Let me just get this working. Okay, I've got it working. Is there a point in me using a mic? Should I just talk like this? Should I use the mic?
This will be recorded, so.
Oh, okay.
Pick yourself up, right?
Gotcha. So I gave this talk at Autodesk. It's sort of my introductory talk. So for some of you, it'll be old news. For some of you, it won't. Hi, I'm Miguel Sternberg. I'm a pixel artist, an indie game developer, and an advocate, a community organizer. Basically, I yell at people a lot to make awesome shit. So those are sort of the two halves of what I do. So art-wise, I'm probably best known for this pixel art piece that was done for the back cover of Scott Pilgrim Volume 4 of Sneaky D's. But I also occasionally do non-pixel art stuff, but pixel art is really like my main thing. So these are some cards I did for the Metagame, which is by Local Number 12. We're an awesome game collective in New York. And it's sort of a game about arguing about games. So I got to do some of my favorite games, Jet Grind Radio, Metal Gear Solid, and Zork. And really sort of step out of my element, so I didn't do pixel art for those ones. Game-wise, I'm one half of Spooky Squid Games. The other half is Andrew Pilkew, he does most of the programming. I do most of the art, design, and talking to people, and that sort of thing. Our first game is Night of the Cephalopods, a terrifying experiment in narrative excess. It's an experimental game. If you've played Bastion, this does something similar to what Bastion does, but it's a much, much smaller game, and it was done, I guess, about 2 years before Bastion. So you sort of wander around this cemetery and sort of dark forest area, and everything you do is narrated back to you in the style of sort of H.P. Lovecraft and old horror radio dramas and such. So sort of first person, if you stand still for too long, you'll sort of go like, my feet were stuck in the ground. I was rooted there in terror, etc. So it was an interesting little experiment. After that, put together Cephalopods Co-op Cottage Defense, because I like really long titles. And it's set in the same world, but it's a co-op game. And It's what I refer to as sort of a hard co-op game in that it actually requires cooperation to play. You can't just sort of both be good. You also have to be good at communicating with each other. So in the game, one person has a shotgun, the other person has a hammer. And if you want to use the other tool, you actually have to agree to it and both hold down a sort of trade button, and then you throw the tools and pass them back and forth. And that becomes sort of key to protecting this cottage from all the evil little squiddy things. So it's sort of in a way like if you can imagine a old school 16-bit Left 4 Dead. It's kind of the same genre, but very, very much more old school. The Night Balloonist is another one of our small games. It's a 4-player party game where you only get one button for each player. So there's no controller other than a single button. And you'll see a photo later of a custom controller we have for it where it's literally like 4 big colored buttons. And in it, I just got a text message. I can hear the Metal Gear sound. In it, you sort of compete in these sort of Art Nouveau steampunk balloons. Is there any way for us to get the lights down a bit? Just because I'm realizing that some of this stuff's pretty dark.
There's only 2 settings, on or off.
For the,
Have them off.
Off works.
Yes.
Just because like some of these are pretty dark. Are we going to lose all power? I see some like pretty... There we go. That's much better. Okay. So now you can actually see the games I've been talking about. Here, I'll just back up quickly. So yeah, you can see they look like things. So yeah, you have these Art Nouveau balloons. You sort of get ink from the bottom, and you can sort of squirt it on each other. You can sort of see there's a path of wind going through the level, and that's what you really use to move around. And despite the fact that it's a single button, you actually have a fairly high amount of nuanced control and strategy to the game. So all 3 of those games are available free on our website. There's someone winning. And we just came out with this. It's called Russian Subway Dogs. I made it for the GDC Pirate Cart Jam, so it was made in 2 days. And you play as a Russian subway dog trying to surprise people from behind so that they'll drop their food so you can grab it, and competing with other Russian subway dogs and avoiding exploding vodka. And we are looking into porting this to iOS.
Yeah, this is full of awesome.
And this is the big game we've been working on, which I'll have set up for people to play later. They Bleed Pixels. It's been, I guess, about 2 years in development now. It was originally going to be a 3-month project. We were really, 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 really wrong about that. It's an action platformer where you play a young girl who finds a mysterious book that turns her into a hideously clawed demon little girl who runs around sort of Lovecraftian environments and creates masses and masses of pixelated blood. The game actually can support around 4,000 pixels of interactive blood that splashes and falls around. It's pretty ridiculous
sit
looking.
down, have fun. Enjoy the presentations.
So just a few other screenshots from that. So this is almost done. We originally were planning it for Xbox Live Indie Games, but we're talking to some people, and we're going to probably be making a fairly big announcement, hopefully in the next little while, and announcing the final platform for it. More shots from it. And this is a project that's currently on hold that we hope that we will someday have the budget to go back to. Guerrilla Gardening Seeds of Revolution. It's a militant stealth gardening game where you try to overthrow an evil dictatorship by planting plants around government propaganda. So this is a mock-up of what the final game would look like.
Miguel, what kind of plants are those that you're planting?
They're sort of really bizarre ones. Like we've got some sleeping poppies over in one corner. There's ones called perennial screamers that just every once in a while they scream, and that can sort of surprise the cops. So you're sort of like, the goal of it is you're trying to draw the cops away from government propaganda, and then plant a bunch of stuff around the propaganda, and then sort of herd the citizens who are all really depressed to see the pretty plants that they'll cheer up and overthrow the government.
That's unique. That's interesting. I love that.
So it's quite an ambitious game, we realized. We spent about a year prototyping it, and we're really hoping at some point we can come back to it and really make that game. So the other thing I do, yelling at people to make cool shit. I really should answer my phone at some point. So I'm part of the Hand-Eye Society. I'm one of the board members. We're a sort of indie games and game culture collective, though definitely that we've had a indie game tilt to what we do. We put on all sorts of events. Up in the corner is a thing we did for Nuit Blanche a few years ago at the TIFF Bell Lightbox, where we had 6 arcade cabinets set up, each with a different Toronto indie game. So you can see Cephalopod's Co-op Cottage Defense being played there. We have socials. We do sort of little indie arcades at events like TCAF. There you can see the custom controller. People are playing Night Balloonists on that. So that's literally, each person just gets that one button. And lately we've hooked up with TIFF Bell Lightbox to do some bigger stuff under the TIFF Nexus banner. So the first thing we did was the Peripherals Initiative, which was mixing hardware hackers and indie game developers to make crazy devices that you'd play games with. The Difference Engine was to get more women involved in game making, and that spun off into Dames Making Games, which was one of the participants Zoe Quinn created. And what I'm working on, which is Comics versus Games, which is this crazy art show jam project. It was inspired by ArtX Games, by Attract Mode, which is a game culture collective in LA and New York. And a few years ago, I saw this show, ArtX Games, which was basically they hooked up a bunch of giant robot illustrators and a bunch of indie game makers and had them make games and then showed them sort of in a gallery setting at Giant Robot in San Francisco. And I thought that was super, super cool. And my sort of background and a lot of my friends are comic creators. So I was like, it would be really neat to do something like that, mixing sort of small press indie comics and small indie game developers. And about 3 years later, I'm now doing it with a whole bunch of amazing, talented people. Some of them are local, some of them are international. But we've got 5 game developers and 5 comic creators, and they're making 5 games. And so it sort of started with, I basically would have them brainstorm crazy concepts to sort of show each other and match people up. The comic artists definitely had the more interesting looking ones. I could put up a bunch of like paragraphs of text, but that would be dull. So this is Kyla and Andy's sort of game idea sketches. And sort of out of that came these 5 games. So Cumulo Nimblos is a party game where you're sort of jumping, trying to get MacGuffins, and competing with other, what do they call them, cloud hoppers or cloppers. And so that's Farbs in Australia and John Martz, who's local. We Are No Angels, which is about dead rock stars who have been forced to play in God's band trying to escape. And it's sort of a gauntlet-style game. The Yogg by Emily Carroll and Damien Summer. This is sort of a RPG multiplayer choose-your-own-adventure game that's inspired by a game called Dungeons of Fate, which I'm a huge fan of. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this one's like. And The Mysterious Aphroditus, which is a tone-based fighting game set in sort of Victorian times, which is by Kyla Vanderklugt. I really don't know how to pronounce her last name, and Christine Love. And Black Church by Alexander Martin and Andy Bellinger, which is sort of a heavy metal Mario meets Tetris game. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the final games of all of these turn out to be, because they really sound interesting and weird. So we're going to be showing these in the week sort of leading up to the Toronto Comic Arts Festival at Magic Pony. May 3rd is going to be the closing party, so if you want to play the games in a really, really crowded space with a lot of loud stuff going on, that's the day to go. And then we're going to be moving them over to TCAF for people to play there. The show at Magic Pony is also going to include some really cool extra stuff. We have the people from Attract Mode who did the original art show that I really liked, curating a bunch of 2D art and illustrations for the show. And we have Daniel Ben-Mogi's experimental comic game that just won an IGF Nuovo Award, Storyteller, and Meanwhile, which is this sort of interactive iPad comic. So it should be pretty awesome. Thanks.
That was highly enlightening. Half of this stuff, more than half of it, I didn't even know of, and I'm floored. I love this. Anyone has questions on what Miguel has been doing?
All right. No, go for it.
What? If you hold it down, it lowers you. Otherwise, you're automatically going up at a certain speed. If you double tap it, you drop ink and boost up really quickly, which you can use to sort of hit people, both below you or above, and knock pollen off of them. So I should have been using the mic for that. I just realized.
It's all right. Yeah, so like I guess what's really awesome is this is really cool. Thank you for this. This is great. I learned a lot of stuff as well, and I think I try to keep up with what's going on here, and there's always things happening that I don't. So like broadly, because this kind of pertains to my own interests, I'm just curious about like your thoughts just as being kind of, heavily involved with the Hand-Eye Society and stuff like that, and organizing all these events. You really consider yourself like you're a community organizer. That's really a good thing for you. How do you feel about Toronto? Like what is it about Toronto that makes it special to you? Is there anything like that?
I think it's partially just because we didn't have an Ubisoft until recently and such, everyone who wanted to make games, we kind of had to do our own thing. So we had sort of a jump start to the whole indie scene. So I think we're one of the larger communities making indie games. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. But I think there's a huge amount of energy in this city for indie games. It's pretty fantastic.
Thanks. Any other questions? Other thoughts?
This is just like my own personal feelings. I think that it's a little bit too easy for us at the size we are to become more insular. It's too easy for us to just involve Toronto devs and such. Like one of the things I've tried to do, both with Comics versus Games and when I didn't even talk about the Torontrons, our arcade cabinets, but also with the arcade cabinet that I did curation for, is try to bring in some people from outside of Toronto and outside of Canada. It's just like once you're as big as we are, like Hand-Eye Society has over 300 members, it's very easy for us to just live in a bubble. And that's something that I really want to see us sort of like, now that we're this size, really reach out and involve ourselves with other communities.
Thanks.
Okay, so Fernando, do you want to do your presentation? Okay, so Tyler, in the meantime, prep and get ready, and Miguel, yeah, you should definitely answer that phone.
That was totally my fault.
No, that's okay. There's been a lot of events that have been happening. The Toronto Global Game Jam still rings very hard in my heart, as well as GDC, but I didn't get a chance to go to GDC. For all of you guys that have went, congratulations. I love you and I'm jealous of you. Yeah, there we go. There we go. But going back to Toronto Global Game Jam, it was an indie thing that was started with by Troy, and it was co-done by Troy Dark, and there was a lot of support. And on top of that, unfortunately, he's not here, but he documented the whole process. It took part in George Brown College, and a lot of really interesting things came out of that. I think later on we'll be talking about it. Actually, Andrew, do you want to?
We should talk maybe about game jam culture.
Yeah, actually.
We've all benefited from a game jam, like having a really influential part.
Yeah, so like I guess again as an outsider, and for anyone else who might be an outsider, can anyone wants to explain exactly how the game jam idea works? Unless everyone here is familiar with it already. I got you here for now.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, I got introduced to the game jam with the Toronto or the Global Game Jam, but I have it akin to previous work that I'd done with the 24-hour comic and Scott McCloud. Essentially, it's you're given a theme at the beginning of I think, was it 48 hours or 72? It was 72? Yeah, okay. It's basically prototyping a game and getting it done to completion as close as you can within a 72 hour period, and just basically submitting it and putting it up online for free. At least that's what I saw from it.
Cool. So one thing that I've always kind of thought was interesting about game jams is like the fact that there seems like there's a lot of spiritual connection with the idea of crunch time, even though everyone seems to hate crunch time. Like it seems that's kind of an industrial like standard for so many people in this that make does anyone see that connection themselves? Anyone want care to elaborate? The battle in the game jam trenches? Okay, explain the theory. I'm curious.
It's a wider theory, but I feel like right now we live in a time, in a culture where intensity and time are considered to be failures. So everybody wants it. And not that I'm saying that a 72-hour thing isn't cool. I think it's amazing. But I also think it's really interesting because of I think it's basically like our attention spans and meme culture have meant that most of what gets produced only gets consumed for between 5 minutes to a week. And nothing is going to get consumed for longer. But if you look at a game like Trivial Pursuit or Scrabble or Monopoly, they've had like 75-year lifespans. And nobody now would invent something and say, oh, people are going to be playing this for 75 years. So they aren't willing to put in the same, like for like a console game where you've got a lot of money coming out of it and a lot of money going into it, of course the production cycles for that are going to be huge. But if you're an indie developer and you know the chances are good that somebody's going to play your game for a month, and if it becomes viral, it'll be viral for a week, would you really put 6 months of labor into that? Because your week would seem really stupid. Whereas if you'd only spent 72 hours and then it gets a week worth of attention, you're like, that's an amazing return on my investment of time. So unfortunately now, when we're trying to learn things, especially technology, we can only afford to invest the amount of time we think we're going to get back out of that technology, which is shitty. As somebody who spent 10 years learning the web, now my learning cycle is about a week. So, yeah, I don't know how game developers feel about that. If you feel like there's the same pressure to be like, okay, well now everybody's making games in this, and I got to learn it now fast because I'm going to have to make games in it in about 3 weeks.
I think the learning element that you captured was pretty dead on. I mean, I think I've seen people from university students that are younger than me, like 20 years old, 21 years old, and they're so bogged down in schoolwork that they haven't actually taken the time to put together a game. And a 3-year game jam says, deal with your immediate incompetencies. Deal with the things that you don't know that you need to know. Those unknown unknowns, right? Like, you have to crunch on those immediately. And I mean, normally in issues of framework, so like getting your basic code framework together, or even, what do you design when you design a game, right? Like, well, sure, those ideas are good, but what else do you need to design? And a lot of those things you don't experience in exercises, but you experience in the creative process. And I think that's what I think there's an adventure in the creative process for the game jams, and it's grounded. So I'm pretty happy to like participate and see what people. I mean, just connecting with people at game jams, just to see what they produce and what overcomings they've had and things like that. It's very interesting because it's just, they're things that people normally avoid, right?
This might just be me. This might be a lot of people. I think when a lot of us were growing up, we had a love of video games, and part of us thought, wouldn't it be cool to one day be able to make those for a living? And I think that's kind of like the genesis of what I'm trying to name for is like the developer's fantasy, or the game developer's fantasy. And you grow up and you see these images, these like guys that they're in t-shirts and jeans instead of like being in a suit and tie in a cubicle, and they're making games. They're having a blast, right? And you grow up thinking like, that's what I want to do. I want to be part of that. I want to do what I love for a living. And then you get there and you realize that part of it, it's fun, it's a blast, but there's a lot of work involved. It's tedious sometimes. You come in day after day, you deal with bad team members sometimes, deal with bad bosses sometimes. The game jam takes all that crap, puts it out the door, and says, this is just the fun parts we're going to focus on. And it's 3 days of just focusing on that fantasy and that dream. So that's where I think kind of the magic of it is. That's why I get out of it anyway.
So it's got these. It seems like it serves a kind of a couple of functions. Like it does remind people of that crunch time, but it also is like this like intense rush of just like creative energy that just kind of pours out of people. And because I know, like for me, like someone who like hangs on the sidelines, like when I see like these games kind of just like appear out of nowhere, right? Like they're not the ones that have just been like, oh, you hear about for months and months. It's just like one day there's a new game, and I think that kind of speaks to your like comment about like it's kind of the meme culture, right? Like someone can just come out with something that just has that right aspect to it that everyone's just like, that's funny, or that's a good idea, and it's simple and it's normally short, but it lives up to whatever it was promised to you because yesterday you didn't know about it and today you do, so you kind of get something out of that. I don't know, I like the speed aspect to that, but also anyway, it's interesting. So yeah, I guess we're ready for another presentation, so. Oh.
There's a fridge full of beer, and we have a policy of not leaving any alcohol overnight, so please do us a favor and help us with the fridge full of beer.
Yeah, by the way, that's kind of a thing that we do here, so feel free to imbibe a drink of your choosing. So,
Speaking of the Belgian fans.
yeah, you can come on over and find a seat, grab a beer. So whose presentation is up next? Fernando. All right, man. You're on deck. Wow us, stun us.
Hey, hello? Hello? Hey, okay, so how many of you are real-time strategy nerds like StarCraft? Right, okay. So there's a few of you guys know about South Korea. South Korea real-time strategy is like their national sport. Yeah, it's true. It's a game, StarCraft, that did this, and it was apparently they have a lot of pollution issues. Running and real exercise isn't such a good thing there, but they took this game of StarCraft and they start putting it on the news, or on the news on the TV every evening, and as a result, this huge piece of culture emerged around it, but also the playing of it really competitively. All right, now if you think about this isn't that new. I mean, when we founded sports, well, most of the games we played were physical. We didn't, have a lot of chess caliber games, right? But I mean, let's talk about chess. I mean, chess, I think it came out of India in the 16th century, and it was nothing like what we play now. But then during, I think, the 18th century and in Europe, it got cultivated into the game we now play, right? And it's like a massive strategy sort of creative puzzle, and I think that's really interesting in terms of games. I think this idea of, I mean, we can create games for entertainment. We can create games to invoke emotion, but we can also create games that are sports, that are really, really, really competitive challenges. And most of these times, these challenges are they're creative. So it's not like a muscle that you're using to throw a ball. It's you watching your opponent, and you're saying, okay, I know what you are, so now I'm going to create what I will be, and that's going to I don't know, be brilliant and awesome. So I made a game called Grid Legion, and it's a turn-based card game. So Magic the Gathering, Pokemon the trading card game. You guys seen those? You know the nerd room back in high school? You notice the nerd room back in high school? What? Okay. Did you play?
Yeah.
Did you play Magic the Gathering?
Oh.
Okay.
Close enough.
That's close enough, for sure. Okay, so I was I was in the nerd room playing Magic back in high school, and I was running a D&D campaign, and yeah, I know, isn't this right? So I'm like 15 and I'm running a D&D campaign, and I need war rules for my D&D campaign. In fact, I have pictures. I can show you guys some pictures. Right, so yeah, so anyway, so I needed rules for my D&D campaign for war. My players, rather than role playing, they decided to build an army. Oh, Jesus. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Hey, I'm having some trouble here. Okay. Actually, you know what? Here, I'm just going to show you the trailer and get this over with so I can close it. So this is the trailer. Liz. Yeah, no, it's just I was loading a file and decided not to show the video anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, my screen's black as well.
That's okay. I think we have the general idea of what's going on here. Oh, blue screen. There we go.
All right, something physical memory.
Awesome.
Actual blue screen. Okay, so that just happened. You know?
Yeah, you.
I win.
You win all the prizes. Beer.
Okay, so yeah. So anyways, I started making games actually because I needed war rules for my D&D campaign, and I just kept building rules at that point. I just kept building new rules, new iterations on these war rules for my D&D campaign, and I actually failed my first programming class. Yeah, it was the last class I had in high school, and you know, on day 2, so it was my last class, and well, I didn't want to be in class, so I skipped a lot of it, and I just didn't appreciate it. But then after designing war rules and rules for games for about 2 years, I realized that if I wanted to be taken seriously as a game designer, I'd have to learn programming, and I love programming now. It's like this awesome creative thing where, you know, it's just you and your program, and I don't know, it's like it's your effort, right? It's the thing where it's like if you put the effort in, you make it, it works, it's awesome, and if you don't, then well, it doesn't. But it's always you in control, so it's kind of like an awesome thing, and really took that pretty far. So I programmed Grid Legion, the like major programmer on it, and I don't know what else to say about it.
What was like? Well, I guess what did you get out of that exactly?
Well, I got to. Okay, so I guess I mean the question of like what makes a game a sport, right? Like what actually do you have to do to make a game like a sport, like that competitive, that much variation in gameplay? And there's a lot to be said there. There's a lot of I mean, if you look at chess, I think, you know, we all know that chess has this huge vacillation in the way it can play out. But it actually has some pretty standard transitions. It has like, you know, the mid game where the early game where you're threatening tiles, where you're trying to increase your threat. The mid game where you're trying to reinforce your tiles. The late game where you're trying to be the last one, you know, to capture more pieces. And then the late game where you're trying to capture your king. There's identifiable transitions in the way the game plays out and the goals and your immediate goals in the game. And obviously that gives way to a really highly creative experience when you're trying to perfect your strategy. So I've got to work at those. I've got to look at a huge number of games. In fact, right now when I play a game, I find it hard to play games now because I'm always researching them. I'm always looking for, you know, what do they do to improve the number of possibilities among possibilities for this game to play out, right? Like, do you have a moment where you have to be defensive, and that's the best strategy? Do you have a moment where you need to play this way, and that's the best strategy? And this idea that, specifically, that you have inside a game a number of ways to be, and a number of ways an opponent can be, and then you have to be something in response to that way. And I think that's what makes something sport-worthy.
Cool.
I got to experience a lot of that.
What? As far as like being someone who's designing games in this city, like what's your experience with Toronto? How do you feel about Toronto as like a place to be making stuff like
well,
this?
like I mean, I can talk about McGill here. You know, when I was 17, and this is probably after about a year and a half of me programming as a hobbyist, and it was really depressing at the time because I was going around to all the universities, and the general thing that universities were saying at the time was, you know, game development, oh yeah, that's easy. So learn what we have to teach you first for 4 years. No, this is what they said. Like, you go to conferences and this is what, you know, professors would say. You'd get them in from the States. You'd hear a huge variety of professors. I did, at least, right? I hunted them down. And I got to hear a lot of, learn what we have to teach you for 4 years, become something like an engineer, and then you'll be a great candidate for something like Ubisoft to take on. And for the next year and a half, they will train you into in the art of game development, right? And now, right now, I have a perspective where it's, I often tell people I'm I'm not a computer engineer. I'm not a software engineer. I'm a software carpenter. All right, putting together a menu system is kind of like putting together a table. It's not something you need tons of knowledge doing, but you need to have put together a menu system before. You need the direct experience of having done something before. But I didn't know that at the time. That's something that, you know, I'd have to mature to figure out. And Toronto kind of, I mean, the wisdom wasn't really out there because, again, the wisdom at the time, the popular wisdom, it wasn't indie framed. It wasn't make your own games framed. It was find a place in a corporate structure framed. And I remember the first time I met some of the guys from Capybara, right, which Miguel was around at the starting of. You know, and they were just a group of guys that, you know, supposedly had been hanging out at the IGDA Toronto chapter meetings. This is a bit before I was going, and you know, like 12 of them were like, well, hey, let's you know, take this to the next level. Let's make this happen, right? And it was kind of out there, right? And I remember seeing that, and I remember it being profound, but not being something that changed me, not something being something that was, well, these guys did it, so I'm going to do it. The next thing that would happen that would change a lot, well, two things would happen very simultaneously. So on the global front, new technology would become available, specifically new distribution, all right? I remember seeing Bill Gates announce the YouTube of video games. We're going to make the YouTube of video games, which is now indie games on the Xbox. Facebook had a platform emerging, and phones were becoming much more viable. So this idea of these extended platforms was coming onto the picture, and I remember, in terms, you know, going back to Toronto's influence, at the exact same time that was happening, MetaNet got N+ published, right, for Xbox Live Arcade. You know, so like maybe 6 months after or something, they published it, and you know, they start selling good copies, and it's like, whoa, that's just really impressive. N+ is a 2D ninja side scroller. And also Capybara, they had made a game called Critter Crunch, and off of the success of that, they were now licensed by Nintendo. So it meant like you could build something, and after building that, you could either make money off of it, or you could use it as a launching point to get a next big contract. So these kind of like indie solutions, these indie business solutions, I don't think they're not as around in other places of the world, right? Like in other places of the world, the wisdom you would have been given and had displayed in a huge surplus would have been the wisdom that I was given at the conferences from the PhD professors, right? You know, go to university for 4 years, learn what we have to teach you, and then you know, get a job in a corporate structure. And that's you know, that's one way, and that's a totally good way. I think it works for some people, but I'm thankful I did the indie developer approach, where I just kept making games and kept refining my craft. I think it's made me really good at what I do.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, I guess we'll keep on moving along. But thanks for that great answer. I'm like, I guess to kind of transfer us over, like I'm just generally interested in, like, you talked about like these new business solutions. You talked about these new, I guess the new technologies. And I think one of the things is, like, does everyone here just feel like it was kind of like both like your own initiative, but also just like maybe just right place at the right time? Like if you wanted to be an indie developer, like, I mean. Yeah. Like, I'm just curious, like, or is there something else going on? All right, so, here you go, Miguel.
I think there's definitely, like, what's happening right now is partially, like, a general cultural thing, but I think it's also the fact that the tools now no longer require people to be very much one specific type of person. I think that early on, that was the case, that you had to be someone who could do hardcore coding, but now you can be a little bit more casual and have a broader set of interests and still make games. So the weirdness of indie games, I think, is partially due to that. And then, yeah, the distribution channels. I think there's been like just a bunch of little things coming together to make the game scene suddenly much more interesting and much stranger than it was, say, 10 years ago. And also just much more open to people just coming in and making shit.
I was recently at South by Southwest, where I saw a really interesting discussion by Andre Monroy Hernandez, who invented Scratch. I don't know, do you guys know what Scratch is?
Oh yeah, I know Scratch.
You know Scratch. So he's moved now. He's not at MIT anymore. He's working for Microsoft, and he's going to be developing a version of Scratch that's going to be, I think, on the Xbox. Microsoft is the one that makes Xbox, yes?
Yes.
So yeah, so you'd be able to use your Xbox to make a game without programming at all.
They did something like called Kudos or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
it's
he's-
interesting that
So yeah, they got him to, I guess,
That
do the next
Scratch is
version of
now,
Kudos
yeah.
that maybe will be even better or something. But I'm curious to know what people think in this room think about the further democratization of the making process, so that there wouldn't be, because there's like a certain myth associated with the kind of programming that you need to be able to do to make a game. And even I, like, who don't really, I just manage people who make games, but I tend to sort of like defer to the person who's doing the programming and say, well, you must know more than me about this because you're the one who does the hard stuff. So if everybody was just moving pictures around, I would stand up for myself a lot more often. So I'd be like, here, let me move that picture. I'll show you. So how do you feel about that idea that soon it won't take programming at all to make a game?
I think it'll always take a certain type of logical structure because that's what games are made out of. But the fact that it's getting easier and easier to do is a really, really good thing, because for a long time I think this has been this myth that video game design and video game programming are the same thing. And they're very, very different, like massively, massively different skill sets. A lot of people happen to have both, but not everyone is. And not everyone who's going to make an important or interesting game is going to have both those skill sets. So separating those, I think, is like the best thing ever, personally.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said. I mean, I actually started, I'd have to even say programming with the StarCraft editor, right? The StarCraft map editor is I mean, I learned a ton on it. I'm dead serious, you know, like this 12-year-old kid that spent like, you know, like 3 weeks making Diablo 2.
God damn it,
for
you're
StarCraft,
young.
you know what I mean? So, I mean, and I think just the idea of like, if we can give people these easy, accessible tools, we will at a younger age encourage them to start making things, which will just, it'll create a culture of game development in a much more fiercer way.
Yeah, it does seem like there's two different levels of programming that are happening, and you can see it in the level and structures of programming. Like my background also is in computer science and digital electronics, and you have machine coding, which is the very base core of it. And actually, I was really interested to see it come up in Minecraft, actually, that you guys were doing. There has been people that have been building massive scientific calculators using the very basic coding language inside of Minecraft itself. But building on above that, having an easier barrier of entry for people to get into game programming is only beneficial towards gaming, because we'll have new innovative ideas coming from pretty much any sort of mind that can actually just put things on the screen and say, I want it to do that. And just removing that barrier of entry can be only beneficial towards the indie community.
Okay, so we have a few more quick presentations, and hopefully after that we'll get into some gaming. So, Tyler, everything set up? So, as Tyler sets up, you said you manage people who make games. How about a little self-introduction there?
Oh, sure. My name's Miriam. I am a recently freelance project manager slash, I don't know what, facilitator. I was project manager sounds so boring, but it's more than that. It's so much more. But I was working at a company called Zincro. We made games for little kids, and I want to start working with people who make games for all ages. So I'm going to be consulting with them and making my own CV, which will hopefully be a game, I kind of think. I feel like that would be a really fun way to make a CV. And I've been looking at everybody else's CV sites, and they're so bad. So I'm happy to take any suggestions on how to game my CV. I'm thinking platformer. Not really, not at all.
That's well. Tyler, you ready? That's actually a perfect introduction, and you have a lot of talent here to network with after the event, so can definitely do that. Tyler, go ahead. Yep.
Excuse me. All right, my name is Tyler Moore. I run a small indie studio called Frostfire Games. Andrew Craig is actually helping me out with this current title, Evil Origins. Excuse the logo a little bit. We're still trying to figure out what works. How many people actually, let me just poll the audience real quick. How many people see Evil Origins and how many people see Evil Origins? Evil Origins first.
I see Evil Origins.
Okay, so we got some artwork to do. So, sorry, what did you say? I missed that. Evil Virgins? All right, direction change. Thank God for prototyping. All right, I have no idea how this is going to run on a projector, and it's also pretty slow on my laptop right now, so bear with me.
Did you plug the audio in?
Sorry?
Did you plug the audio in?
No audio right now, or none that I want to quite show off quite yet. I'll actually go into the design a little bit. So I'm a huge fan of sci-fi, I'm a huge fan of horror, and I'm a huge fan of metaphysics and cosmic physics. I've always been fascinated by black holes, and I was kind of saying, like, what can we use that as like a source for a game? So the game itself is a haunted spaceship adventure with a horror survival theme to it. You play the role of a space paramedic, that's what we're going with right now, who's investigating this mysteriously abandoned space station orbiting a black hole. And the big challenge we had going with this, and we're still working on this now, is how do we build a core mechanic around horror? And by core mechanic, I mean, what is the 1 minute to 30-second, even 10-second play cycle? What do you do over and over again that really speaks to horror, speaks to our inspirations from H.P. Lovecraft, and says, like, this is genuinely creepy. Like, we don't want to rip off Dead Space. We don't want to have stingers where the monster jumps out, boogity boogity, and you're scared. We want to have a genuinely terrifying or unsettling experience. Something that toes the line between noir, horror mystery, and, well, outright terror. So you have to bear with me. The game is still extremely rough. We're still trying to find what is that sort of magical core mechanic to the game that makes it fun. So I'm just going to run through it really quickly, or at least what we got so far, and we'll do some Q&A. Yeah, it's not built for this small resolution.
Oh, that's completely all right. So what are we looking at right now?
Okay, so we're looking at the perspective, and I'm going to get, oh wow, it's really dark. Any way to turn up the brightness on the projector?
We can, turn it up?
Yeah, like it's fairly light on my screen, but fairly dark in the projector.
Yeah, I think that's probably the brightest it gets. Yeah, we can. Is that better?
No, it's not going to help.
Or is it just too dark?
It's just too dark. The game itself is a very dark game, so we're still playing with the gamma correction. But let me see if I can make it work regardless. So yeah, it's a top-down perspective. Try a little bit of influence from Alien Swarm.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh yeah.
So it's dark.
So what we're trying to do is what is that sort of core mechanics to me scary? So drawing from adventure roots, the core adventure is kind of, explore the world around you, learn more about the world, and you get this picture of the universe you're exploring with. So what we're playing with right now is that you can scan different elements in the world. So picture your flashlight here as a scanning device. You roll over different objects in the world, they highlight, and again, like these are all very rough. And you get some notion, you get experience points, you get some notion of, you've learned more about the world. Now, the scanning itself, like, it might not just trigger, where we have right now is just a piece of information, but it might trigger like something very creepy to happen, it might trigger some sort of a ghost to appear. How to make it creepy? And then the different ideas that you can switch between different scanning types. So right now you're seeing, imagine it as light in the visible spectrum, and we'll be having different lighting effects, but imagine this is now you're seeing light in the UV spectrum. We're actually playing this right now is trying different color palettes in like a monochromatic setting to sort of identify different motions. So like a UV is more blue oriented, it's more of an exploratory feel, it's more calming, whereas green or red might be more shifted towards combat or something a little more tense. So again, like different things, you can spot different things, or sorry, different spectrums of light. So what you just saw there was me scanning a weird blood stain on the floor, or some sort of other stain. So yeah, it's a bit of a detective game at the moment. And we're going to be doing more with this and just see what we can find that's creepy. Any comments or thoughts? For me, this is an exercise in feedback, an exercise in getting first impressions from people.
Oh, yeah. Well, I I was thinking, this is just a thought, with what you said. With what you said regarding using different colors of flashlight to represent different emotions, would that maybe lead to like maybe prompting an encounter with an enemy? Like say you're walking around, you're using the red flashlight, and then you would flash it in a certain spot, and that would be where you would, get your fright moment from. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but like a trigger, a encounter of some sort.
What we're working with right now is that imagine we're in sort of a red themed light. That would be the sort of the treatment of the thermal viewing light, and the idea is that only combat occurs within that color spectrum or within that light. So in general, like this level design, the space you're in when you have to use the red light would be more shifted towards enemies are going to pop out.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit of a hint towards the player, but maybe down the road we can break those rules and reinforce horror.
Oh, yeah, because that would be a really awesome idea.
Oh, thank you. Another thing we want to try too is like it's been a dominant theme of Lovecraft is that the protagonist is always like this investigative person, someone who is kind of towing the line of digging too far, and that's kind of like one of the roots of horror is that it's that constant tension between exploring the unknown and going too far in exploring the unknown. So in a way, when you're scanning things that you have to scan because that's how you progress in the game. You want to know what's going on, but in doing so, you bring on your own sort of doom and your own sort of threats. And I feel like that conflict could be really really fun.
I just with a horror game, I'm just wondering what you think about. Yeah, for example, here there's some areas that can be seen just below the shadows, so you could have things moving constantly here and there, but once the light gets on it, of course they're gone, and then there's just the impression of movement. So you wonder what's happening there. This in comparison to nothing happening, and then of course there's that suspense that's building and building. In horror, how do you feel about those two and that progression?
Well, the answer, it always lies in pacing, right? It's like, we just haven't really gotten there yet. If we feel like doing stuff like that, it makes it creepy. If we feel it really works, we'll use it. But we just haven't even had a chance to prototype that yet. I definitely want to try it, though. Did that answer your question?
No, I have a quick question. So I'm just curious, how does scanning work? Is it interactive, or is it just like press the mouse button down and just wait till it scans through?
Yeah, you just I can talk loud enough. You just hold the flashlight over an object, and that triggers the scanning. Oh, for a scan.
Oh, sorry guys. Can you hear me now? Oh, you. Okay.
Oh, you're only recording off the microphone.
The reason I ask is, has anybody here played Thief 3? By any chance? No?
What game?
Thief 3.
No.
Deadly Shadows. One of the aspects from there that I really like, that really added to that suspense, is, for example, when you're picking the lock to a door. A lot of times it was real time, right? So there was a puzzle aspect where you had to move around these lock picks in a certain fashion to open this door. It wasn't a static thing where you just wait, it opens. The thing that immediately struck me is when I see scanning. The act of scanning is kind of it makes you vulnerable in a sense. So if you introduce maybe some sort of interactive element or a puzzle element or something, so that in the process of when they're scanning, they're vulnerable at that time, and they could be jumped by an enemy at any time. So that could kind of make it add a little bit more to that vulnerability and that suspense. And that's just the thing that immediately struck me when I saw that. Anyway.
Yeah, when I think of suspense, I normally think of I think it was Hitchcock that said the best way to build suspense is to put a bomb under the table and it doesn't explode. It's there, but you're not really you still can't count on whether or not there's actually a moment of truth coming from that, or which is kind of in opposite to Chekhov, who said you can't introduce a gun without having it fire, right? So there's kind of those narrative cues can always be really like anticipatory, but like also like building a sense of dread. Like when I think of things that are scary, there's always like those things that are like I know are there, or I'm like relatively like certain that are there, but I can't actually reach out and touch them. And so that's why like a game like Left 4 Dead is kind of like at times very suspenseful, because there are moments when like you're running around and you actually can't, like you're not sure if zombies are going to come and get you, you know, like, and in the same way, like, you know, any good game, you're always afraid that at any time something could happen, but as long, you know, in a different way than like the Dead Space like gotcha moment where I came around of a corner, like a Doom 3 or something like that, right? Yeah, so you got a comment? Yeah.
Hey, what's up? All right, so you were just talking about Dead Space, and so that made me think about how in Dead Space, you know, being a sound guy, obviously the sound design in Dead Space, you were saying, okay, you know, you don't know if something's around the corner, but you're scared that it might be. That's the whole idea behind Dead Space. You hear stuff, and it's like, okay, what was that? You know, is it this way or this way? You know, and so I mean, this could add, you know, some adaptive music or some cool stuff. You know, would really add that horror sort of scary genre sort of deal. You know.
Thank you. All right. Well, I think this is like really cool. I'm glad that you came here with like looking for feedback. Let's like, if anyone has more ideas, like especially when we're done, like let's get some conversations going. Let's throw our ideas out there, because I think that's
Better idea. How about we have one more talk and then we play and schmooze? Sounds good. Sounds great. Yeah. How about that?
You seen had it in my head. Figured it out already.
Yeah. Comment. Hold on. Here you go.
Regarding this game, and regarding what everybody was just saying just now regarding sound would be a great idea for this game. Just saying. I mean, like it.
No, totally silent. You're deaf
Areas
deaf
with no
antagonist.
sound would also be really good for that game. Like depending on where you put it and where you plan to have it, because it just made me think of Silent Hill.
We do.
Where you're in the prison down below the society, and you're walking by this. There's a particular set of prison cages. You can't see anything in there, but you hear like this horrible sound every 2 seconds, and you think that monster is in there. And the thing is, you have to go in there to get an item, but you're not sure if the monster's in that cell or in the cell next door. But when you finally rack up the courage to go in there, you realize the monster's in the cell next door, but you're never sure if that thing's going to attack you or not, just because of the sounds it makes.
I just want to touch on that moment of tension you outlined. Who here has played Amnesia: Dark Descent?
I've heard of it, but haven't played it.
All right. You still haven't played it, Miguel. No, yeah. Well, Well, I get a lot of hate if it's not much of a spoiler, but it does kind of might ruin one of the moments. Actually, just ask me about it later and we'll talk about it. I don't want to ruin it for people, because it's a really genuinely awesome moment that I don't feel I should not deprive anyone of that.
Yeah, it's just that we're on a little bit of a time cramp, and there's so much awesome going on, and I just want us to all schmooze and have fun. So, mobile app developer. There we go. Let's have a talk. Let's have a little introduction, and tell us what you do.
All right, sure. So I'm completely unprepared. Apparently, I found out I was talking about, well, an hour and a bit ago.
My bad.
But anyways, so I'm a mobile app developer. I'm currently working for a company called Extreme Labs. So the company is slowly becoming one of the mobile experts, not only in Canada, but arguably in North America. And we're hoping at some point, the world, this is no joke. The company is becoming very high profile in the industry. We have very high profile clients. I mean, our client list extends from things involving game development. We recently released Twist Tile, which is what you would consider an indie game for the iPad, and it extends all the way up to building sports applications, such as the sports applications, the official sports applications for the NBA, for CBS Sports. We do banking applications with CIBC. But there are two interesting things in mobile development that directly relates to games, and one of those directly relates to all games, including indie games. And the first one is the concept that I actually originally laughed at when I first heard of it, which was this word gamification. And originally, I first thought that this was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard from until, and I'm going to be dodging my non-disclosure agreement right now, until I ended up working for a billion-dollar company that all they do is gamification. And it is ridiculous just how profitable this enterprise is, because you're essentially taking marketing data and you're taking concepts that people usually find to be boring and annoying, advertisements, marketing research, and somehow you build this game on top of it that is worth $1 billion just for this one company that started up not too long ago. As I said, I'm dodging my non-disclosure agreement with that. But so the first thing is that as indie game developers, the concepts that you come up with don't just lie within the purview of the games that you create. It extends over to popular media. It extends over to marketing, research, and advertising. This extends into the importance of analytics software. I know that there has been a lot of flack that developers receive in the indie community because of the amount of technology and the amount of programming and the amount that it can actually hinder game development just as much as it can help. But analytics tracking, even in indie games, you need to know how your users are using your game, so that's something else that's very important, actually leads right into gamification. What are the fun elements? How do you attract your audience? And then at some point, how do you eventually profit from it? Because we can't be making indie games if we're not making money and able to support ourselves. So the second thing that I want to talk about is something that is very relevant in today's mobile industry. And the mobile industry right now, pretty much nobody disagrees with this, which is it is the fastest growing industry in the world right now. It is seeing pretty much exponential growth year on year. It's growing by something like 24% a year. And it's been doing this for about 5 years now. But more importantly, you are essentially getting this supercomputer in the palms of your hand that has the graphics capabilities, the processing power to actually push out almost any game you can imagine. I mean, there's a reason why Microsoft and Sony have been sticking with the PlayStation Xbox, and it's because the amount of computing power you need in order to represent your creativity is pretty much there. The only more processing power that you could throw into it is for what? Prettier graphics or more AI or more of everything. But in general, we've reached the peak where you could pretty much throw most creativity at the technology and it can handle it. But the interesting thing is where design and technology, specifically design and development, interact. One way or another, you can break down a game into 3 parts, and only 3 parts. You have the models, the data elements that the game is based off of. You then have the logic that manipulates the data that is stored within these elements. And then you have the graphics, that is the graphical representation of the models. It's the model view controller that essentially runs pretty much everything, not just in gaming, but in mobile today. But the interesting thing is the consequences for designers in the fragmentation of the mobile market. Specifically, we have currently 4 major players in the mobile market, which is RIM, Microsoft, Apple, and Google, with Android, iOS, Windows Phone 7, soon 8, and BlackBerry's whatever they're going to release, to change names far too many times. But what it comes down to is, let's take probably the worst offender right now, which is Android. Arguably BlackBerry, but let's take Android for a minute. If you are building a game for Android and you're designing it, that's great, but what screen size are you designing it for? Which operating system are you designing it for? And the problem is that it's amazing how the resolution of the screen that you're building for defines your art. And if it defines your art, it defines the way people view and experience your game. But the problem that you then encounter after that is processing power, aspect ratio, memory space, graphics capability. Does the phone even have a graphics card? Can it actually render even the basic pixel art 2D graphics that you're pushing out? An example of this is for the game Twist Tile. I was hoping I could have run this project, but unfortunately I didn't have the iOS expertise at the time, so I ended up consulting for the team that was building Twist Tile. And even for something like iOS, which is Apple's products that you're building for, there's this challenge based around the different generations of the products. When a new Apple product comes out, yes, it may get several million users very quickly on, but you end up encountering the problem where the technology shifts just enough that depending on which device you target, your game will play differently. Your experience will change. Something as simple as switching between the iPad 1 and the iPad 2. Very closely related processing power when it comes to single, okay, let's skip the technology. The graphics processing power on the iPad 2 far outclasses the iPad 1. But more importantly, this changes the way the game plays. We encountered a problem, this is the simplest problem I can think of. We had to render lines in twist tile. If you pick it up, it's essentially a game where there's a fuse running around the line and you have these spinning tiles that you have to twist into the right orientation in order to maximize your score as the fuse is chasing you. But the lines appeared like a giant staircase with breaks in it when you were viewing it on the iPad 1 versus the iPad 2. Why? Because the iPad 1 didn't have the graphics capability to display the line in a way that would be cohesive to the user experience. Now, this is just iOS, where the devices are very similar from generation to generation, but when you go into Android, it gets even worse. If you're targeting Honeycomb today, which for those who don't know is the first Android tablet operating system, the new one coming out is called Ice Cream Sandwich, but depending on which one you target, you are going to get vastly different screen resolutions, graphics capabilities, memory constraints, and more importantly, your ability to manage the user interface. Is it a 4-inch tablet? 6-inch? 7, 9, 10, 12? It's a very, very critical constraint. So if I were a game developer right now, if I were an indie developer, and if you guys are trying to figure out where you want to launch your platform, I guess that the best thing I could do here is actually give advice. Which platform do you target? And the answer, and I hate to say this because I hate the marketplace involved here, but it is Apple. The marketplace that you target for video games today is Apple. It's the place where you get to spend the least amount of time in design and development for the maximum benefit, the largest gaming market, and perhaps more importantly, the most profit. And while the other platforms, while I'm a very, very big Android fan, and I've had quite a bit of development experience building little games in my spare time for XNA Studios for Windows Phone devices, there's not really anything in the industry today that can give you the bang for your buck as developing for iOS. And I'm really hoping that the other platforms catch up. They're not there yet. This talk could change in a matter of months or years. But I guess that's all I want to say. Are there any questions?
Guys, questions? Oh, here.
I just want to point out that to give some historical context to everything you're saying applied just as much 10 years ago for web development and game development on the web 10, 15, 20. Like, it's always, the hardware never works. It's never compatible across systems. You're always worrying about what platform you're developing for and for whom and how many people will buy your product. I'm not saying that I'm disagreeing with what you're saying, but I'm saying it's generally up to developers to choose the platform that they think works best, push that platform to do its best, and then get the spec expanded and to get it universally applied. And the thing that pisses me off as an Apple user is that Apple seems to have cornered the mobile market, but it should not. And it's not up to Apple to change that, and it's not up to consumers to make that change. It's up to the people making the products that consumers want to make that change. So, you know, like, I don't really see the relevance of saying, oh, well, Apple is best, so you should probably work in Apple. I see the relevance in saying something like HTML5 is going to be awesome. You should probably get really good at HTML5 now so that later on, when it's actually supported in all the different browsers, you're able to make the games that people buy and you are in high demand. We're doing this in my office right now. Like, it's really frustrating to get RFPs from people who don't understand the technology and ask for impossible things, and then say, okay, well, we can't actually do this because what you want is only available like in iOS, and we can only package it for one device, and that's really frustrating because the money you have to spend, you only have to spend one time. And making something for you that only works on one device is actually giving you really bad service as a technology provider. Like, that's a shitty amount of money to spend for one small piece of the market. So I would say, as indie developers, get really good at all of them so that when the thing falls out, you actually have the skill set you need to make a better profit. It's going to change in 2 years anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree with that. But the different thing is that there's a very, very, very big difference between something like HTML5 and native development. And unfortunately, this is a constraint that developers are constantly screaming up the chain to the people making the design decisions, because especially with something like HTML5, people are saying it's going to take off, it's going to take off, it's going to take off, when unfortunately the answer is we don't know. We hope it's definitely the new web technology. But is it the new technology for interactive entertainment? And while it does provide significant interactive benefits versus the previous technologies, will it be the language, the technology of gaming in the future? And the answer is you don't know. So where I disagree is that that kind of thinking essentially leads to hedging your bets on a particular technology. And so my recommendations are, what would you do if you want to build a game for the next year? What do you do if you're launching a game right now on for the next year, and which is the platform do you target? And the answer is that because technologies are constantly shifting, the answer is that you don't want to learn everything. You say, what's the best for today? You learn that, you develop for that. And then the second you're done, you say, okay, what's the technology now? And that's largely where the industry is. So from my perspective, and once again, it depends on who you are in the industry. It depends whether you're a designer, a developer, or in marketing or management. From my perspective, to simplify my life as the developer, to save management money, in order to save the time of the designers and the constraints on development, the constraints on design and development, unfortunately today, where you target is iOS, because it shortens your development life cycle for the most benefit for native development. And that's the way it is for at least the next year. And then we'll see after then. So
I'm quite interested, Miriam, by your comment earlier about who's going to develop the game that will last 6, 7 decades. And this is an interesting contrast to how the platform for that can't even be factored in, because of the not only the inability to predict what the platform of next year will be, but the ingrained assumption that whatever platform we have today will not be there 12 or 16 months. No, but it even, one would assume, transcends HTML5. I mean, yes, it's a standards argument, and yes, it's a sort of universal argument. But for me, as you know, as we've tonight talked about, you know, the range of, say, programmer to designer. I mean, I'm certainly on the designer level, right? And as a designer, I suppose I think, what kind of game could I come up with that would last 60, 70, 80 years? And at this point, it's almost the, you know, designer drug, right? That I'd have to think of something that induced a particular hallucination.
Sudoku.
That was, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that almost seems like the larger challenge vis-a-vis platform.
Yeah, I was just going to say that again, like these things, like where it's a non-corporate standards-based language over something that is developed for a specific platform, generally tends to stand the test of time. Even Flash now, as soon as it stops getting support from major entities, is no longer going to be something viable in the next 5 years. So all of that knowledge is going to have to get transferred into something open. So at the very least, I agree with you, like learn the thing that is making money now, but always hedge your bets and learn a thing that isn't making money but that's going to stay around forever, so that at the very least you can go back to that and be like, well, I'm going to keep writing in this thing. You know, make board games, for crying out loud. Those will eventually make you tons of cash, and you can just make them in paper if like all the computers blow up.
And the last thing is that there's this almost a misconception that HTML5 is a game developer's language, and it really, really isn't. Can you make games? Can you make games in HTML5? Can you push out simple, fun browser games? Yes, but it is a very significant amount of effort in HTML5 versus the power of the tools that are behind the other platforms as well. So from the perspective of strictly game design, short of something that is very simplistic, the second you enter any level of complexity, it begins to become not worthwhile at all.
But okay, so is there another language besides the iOS language that you would recommend for mobile game design that would work?
Not necessarily language. A language, from the development perspective, a language is, it shouldn't matter what language you're working in. What's important is the theory behind it. So what I would recommend for anybody who's looking into getting into programming specifically around video game design.
For mobile.
Is, for mobile. Everything is constantly shifting. The advantage to learning Objective-C right now is that Apple has pretty much promised long-term support for Objective-C. The issue with Java right now is that Java used to be the language of both BlackBerry products and Android products, but unfortunately this is now changing. BlackBerry is shifting over to C++ at the moment, which is the worst language ever written in my opinion. So so what would you learn right now? I would say that if you want to learn theory, like basic programming theory, learn Java. It is very clean. It has very nice abstractions. And then when you want to actually go and do game development, Objective-C is not a very far stretch. But once again, it's more about the theory behind it that allows you to pick up the languages, and thus it doesn't matter what platform you're working on. It's just a matter of learning the intricacies of the platform.
Okay, so guys, there's a lot of passion going on. There's a lot more to be on the plate. Yeah, so there was a lot more to be on the plate and a lot more to be discussed, but I think right now what we should do is jump into after party mode and drink some beers and play some stuff. Yeah, and oh yeah, absolutely. Daniel?
So I guess just to wrap up, yeah, I've been running this thing for a while now, and it's been fun. But really the goal, I think, and I hope everyone had a good discussion, and we touched off a lot of topics today. What makes a good horror game? What's the best platform to develop for from a business perspective? Yeah, comics and games, like developing a community here in the city. What's cool about game jams? I don't know. All those kinds of things are like weird topics that I think kind of go well in a format like this. The Salon format, the kind of like get your brain cooking, get your brain talking about whatever the heck it is that it's on your mind, and really just it being about everyone here rather than any just one person. So I hope that everyone kind of had a good experience with tonight, and that you will come out again to another Play the Impossible. There are also lots of other cool events here at the Academy that run the gamut from like Test the Impossible, which is like where you can bring new things that you're working on. So it's like a good time to like demo a game or demo a product that you're working on for like, you know, a Kickstarter. We had one of those and stuff like that. So in general, the idea is just a positive space, a cool space to come, and yeah, well, next Thursday, if you're interested at all in a social change and the power of social media to basically impact world movements and politics and all that kind of stuff, a man that I'm good friends with, Daniel Drach, will be coming in to talk about just a lot of the things that he's noticed in all over the world going on, as far as like, you know, like the revolutions that happened in the Arab Spring last year, like Occupy Wall Street, and ongoing issues right now that are happening in the world today. So we're just going to be talking about politics, talking about social media, technology, the power of the internet to basically change our world and stuff like that. So that'll be happening next Thursday here at the same time, and then in a month's time, yeah, another Play the Impossible. So is there anything else?
Almost would offer a question on that. Is Occupy Wall Street an attempt to gamify politics? Tune in next week to discuss.
Yeah, so you know, like we can talk about gamification as well then. So, and here, as always, Yassini, great guy. I'm glad he got everyone here and stuff like that. So, yeah, like this guy deserves a big thanks. He showed up at one of the Play the Impossibles and seemed really into it. So I'm just glad that everything else I've done so far has seemed halfway interesting to get him involved. So thank you. All right.
Actually, no, thank you. For all the rest of us, including me who haven't had the chance to present, what we're going to do is we're just going to crack open our laptops and open up the games that we made, and let's just go and play each other's stuff. How about that? Look at the enthusiasm. Okay, all right. Yeah. So more beer, more games, and more time to network and schmooze. All right, guys?